The words sliced through the cold morning air like a blade. "Our mom died this morning. We have nowhere to go." The older girl's voice trembled, barely rising above the wind that howled between the glass walls of Whitaker Tower. Snow clung to her thin jacket, her small hand gripping the younger one beside her, a girl clutching a faded shoebox wrapped in an old scarf. People passed without stopping. The city didn't slow down for sorrow, but Nathan Whitaker did. He stopped mid-stride, one gloved hand still holding his car keys, eyes fixed on the two children standing in the blizzard outside the skyscraper that bore his name. If this moment already pulls at your heart, stay with me, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about compassion loss and second chances. Drop a comment if you've ever witnessed kindness appear when it was least expected. Nathan Whitaker wasn't the type of man who lingered on sidewalks. At 38, he was the architect of his own empire, a billionaire whose name echoed through Chicago's real estate skyline. He lived by schedules and contracts, not by impulse. Yet, something about those girls, especially the older ones' steady eyes despite the shivering, made him forget the morning meeting waiting 20 floors above. He glanced toward the revolving doors where his driver gestured urgently, but the girls didn't move. The younger one coughed a weak sound that cut through the rush of traffic. He approached, carefully lowering himself to their eye level. "What did you say?" he asked. The older child, Evelyn, swallowed hard. "Mama told us to come here. She said Mr. Whitaker would help if anything happened." Her words hit like thunder under the snow. Nathan froze. 10 years ago, in another storm, a paramedic named Rachel Lane had pulled him from a collapsed construction site. He hadn't forgotten her name, or the quiet voice that told him he was lucky to live. Now, her daughters stood before him. A crowd had begun to gather, some curious, some recording with their phones. Nathan straightened, irritation flashing across his face. "You two come with me," he said. A security guard stepped forward. "Sir, they can't." Nathan cut him off. "They can, and they will." His tone silenced the lobby. He shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around the smaller girl. The fabric dwarfed her frame, but her fingers clung to it as if holding on to warmth itself. Inside the marble lobby, heat and light poured over them. The girls blinked, stunned. Evelyn's eyes darted to the reception desk, to the polished floor that reflected their muddy boots. "We're sorry," she whispered. "We'll go if we're not supposed to." Nathan shook his head. "You're exactly where you should be." He guided them toward the elevator, ignoring the stairs. His assistant appeared, tablet in hand. "Mr. Whitaker, the investors from Tokyo." He raised a hand. "Reschedule." She hesitated. "For when, sir, I don't know. Just not today." As the elevator doors closed, Nathan caught their reflection in the steel panel, the towering man in a tailored suit and two children, bundled in coats that weren't theirs. For a fleeting second, it looked almost like a family portrait captured by accident. When they reached the private floor, he led them into his penthouse suite where a fireplace glowed and the city spread out below in silver haze. "You can warm up here," he said, motioning toward the couch. The younger girl, Lila, stared at the flickering flames, as if they might vanish if she blinked. Evelyn placed the shoebox on her lap and held it tightly. Nathan noticed her knuckles whitening. "What's inside?" he asked gently. Evelyn hesitated, then opened it. Inside lay a folded photograph, a small key, and a sealed envelope with his name written in familiar handwriting, Rachel Lane. His heart thudded once hard. He took a breath, but didn't open it yet. "Where did your mom tell you to go after finding me?" he asked quietly. "She said you'd know what to do," Evelyn whispered. Nathan turned toward the window. Snow blurred the skyline, softening the edges of the world. He felt a pull he hadn't known in years, the weight of a promise he'd never made but somehow had been waiting to keep. Down below, sirens wailed faintly through the storm. His phone buzzed again with reminders, deadlines, and deals. He silenced them all. For once, business could wait. He poured 2 cups of cocoa from the minibar, handed them to the girls, and sat across from them. The younger one smiled shyly through cracked lips. Evelyn looked up, eyes searching his face. "Are you really him, the one Mama talked about?" He nodded slowly. "I think I am." She exhaled, shoulders trembling, not from the cold this time, but from something deeper like the beginning of trust. The fire crackled. Outside, the storm grew heavier, covering the streets and the past alike. Nathan opened the envelope at last. Inside was a single line, written in hurried ink, "If they ever find, you take them home." He stared at the words until they blurred. In that moment, everything changed. The billionaire who once measured life by profit felt it shift beneath his feet. 2 little girls had walked into his morning, and unknowingly into his future. Room 2501 felt impossibly quiet after the elevator doors slid shut. The hum of the city faded to a dull echo behind thick glass, leaving only the crackle of the fireplace and the uneven breathing of 2 frightened children. Nathan Whitaker loosened his tie, realizing for the first time in years that he had no idea what to do next. His world usually ran on meetings, contracts, and predictable outcomes, never on the trembling of a child's voice or the sight of small shoes leaving puddles on imported marble floors. Evelyn sat rigidly on the edge of the couch, her back straight as if good posture could keep her safe. Beside her, Lila clutched the oversized coat Nathan had wrapped around her in the lobby. Her eyes followed every flicker of the fire, like it might burn out and take their last bit of warmth with it. They hadn't said a word since entering the suite. Nathan moved slowly, aware that every sound, the soft click of his shoes, the rustle of fabric, seemed to startle them. "You can take your shoes off," he said finally, trying for a calm tone. "It's warm here." Evelyn looked at him uncertain. "Mama said not to touch things that aren't ours." Her voice wavered. "That's a good rule," he replied softly. "But I think your mom would make an exception today." He ordered room service, ignoring his assistant's texts buzzing across the counter. Within minutes, a knock came at the door. A tray appeared with grilled cheese sandwiches and mugs of cocoa topped with melting cream. The girls hesitated. Lila sniffed the cup first, suspicious. Nathan almost smiled. "It's safe, I promise," he said, taking a sip from his own cup to prove it. Slowly, they followed. When the smallest one began to eat, she did it quietly, almost guiltily. Nathan watched in silence. He had seen hunger before he grew up in it, but seeing it now on faces so young made something inside him twist. He tried to start conversation. "Evelyn, how old are you?" "9, she said without looking up. "Lila just turned 5. We were going to have pancakes, but Mama didn't wake up." The air shifted. Nathan set his cup down carefully. "I'm sorry," he said. The words felt insufficient, almost useless. Evelyn nodded, as if she'd already run out of tears. "She told us to come find you. She said Mr. Whitaker would remember her." "I do," he said quietly. "Your mother once saved my life." Lila stopped eating, eyes wide. "She did." Nathan nodded, remembering flashing lights, dust, and a paramedic's voice, steady in chaos. He didn't tell them everything that he had promised to thank her properly, and never did that success had a way of burying debts of the heart. The phone rang, suddenly breaking the fragile calm. Nathan answered, recognizing the voice on the other end, Clara Brooks, from the Department of Children and Family Services. She had already heard about 2 minors found at Whitaker Tower. Her tone was firm, professional. "Mr. Whitaker, until we verify guardianship, the girls must be placed in temporary care tonight." He stared at the children, curled on his couch, one already drifting toward sleep, the other still gripping that shoebox of keepsakes. "No," he said. "Not tonight." "Sir, that's standard procedure." "I understand procedures," he replied, his voice steady. "But I also understand responsibility. They stay here until we sort this out." There was a pause, then Clara sighed. "Fine, but I'll come by in the morning for an assessment." Nathan hung up, exhaling slowly. He leaned against the wall, watching the snow drift past the window. Evelyn's gaze followed him warily. "Are they going to take us away?" "Not if I can help it," he said. Silence fell again, but it was different this time, less fearful, almost cautious hope. Later, he found Lila asleep under a blanket near the fireplace. Evelyn sat awake, tracing the edges of the shoebox. Nathan crouched beside her. "What's in there, Mom's picture," she said, "and a key, I think, to our old place. We left fast. Can I see?" She hesitated, then handed him the photo. It showed Rachel Lane smiling beside an ambulance, sunlight cutting across her hair. Nathan felt a sharp pull in his chest. Time had not dimmed the memory of that day, the sirens, her hand steady on his wrist, her voice saying, "You're going to be fine." "She said you'd know what to do," Evelyn murmured, repeating the words from the letter. He looked down at the envelope on the table, still unopened, his name, written in that same handwriting. He had been afraid to read it, afraid of what it might ask of him. "Your mom trusted me," he said finally. "So, I'll take care of you. That's a promise." Evelyn searched his face as if testing the truth of it. After a long moment, she nodded and leaned back against the cushions, exhaustion overtaking her small frame. Nathan covered her with the same blanket and sat quietly listening to the rhythm of their breathing. The suite felt different now. The sterile luxury of room 501, the leather chairs, the art. No one looked at the scent of polished wood seemed almost human for the first time. The fire burned lower, casting soft amber across the room. Nathan picked up the letter again and turned it over in his hands, but didn't open it yet. Instead, he walked to the window. Below, the city glittered beneath fresh snow, unaware of the shift happening 30 stories above. He saw his reflection, a man who had everything except what truly mattered. Behind him, 2 children slept in peace for the first time in what might have been days. He whispered almost to himself, "You saved me once, Rachel. Looks like you're saving me again." Outside, the storm eased, the wind settling into a quiet hush. Inside room 251, the billionaire, who thought he had no room left for surprises, realized that the night had only just begun. The next morning, gray light filtered through the wide windows of room 2501. Snow still covered the city, but the storm had quieted. Nathan Whitaker stood by the table watching the 2 sisters eat pancakes that room service had delivered before sunrise. Evelyn ate in small, careful bites. Lila dipped each piece into syrup as if rationing sweetness. For a man who once planned every minute of his life, Nathan found himself without a single plan. He had read the letter Rachel left only once, but the words kept echoing. "If they find you, take them home." By mid-morning, he decided to do just that. Not to the penthouse, not to any hotel, but to the last address written on the envelope. Lakeview Drive. The drive was silent, except for the rhythmic hum of tires cutting through slush. Lila watched snowflakes melt against the window, while Evelyn stared straight ahead, clutching her mother's shoebox. When they reached the apartment building, Nathan's chest tightened. The small brick complex sat on the corner of a quiet street. Its sign faded, and a notice of property closure taped to the glass door. A uniformed officer standing nearby recognized the name on Nathan's ID. "Mr. Whitaker, you're here about Ms. Lane's unit?" he asked, lowering his voice with unexpected gentleness. Nathan nodded. The officer led them up a narrow stairwell to apartment 3B. The door bore a red sticker, "Sealed pending estate review." The officer peeled it back enough for Nathan to step inside. The room was dim and still, as if time had been holding its breath. A single chair sat beside a window overlooking the frozen lake. A stack of unpaid bills lay on the counter. There were children's drawings on the refrigerator, smiling stick figures labeled Mommy Me and Lila. Evelyn stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide. "She made us pancakes right here," she whispered. Nathan's throat tightened. He walked slowly through the space, careful not to disturb anything. A small photo frame lay face down on the dresser. When he lifted it, he saw a picture of himself 10 years younger, injured but alive, shaking hands with the woman who saved him. The newspaper clipping beneath it was from the day after his rescue. Construction magnate survives collapse, paramedic, Rachel Lane, credited. In the corner, beside a worn couch, he noticed a shoebox identical to the one Evelyn carried. He opened it gently. Inside were medical records, employment forms, and a copy of a contract from Whitaker Construction, dated the year of the accident. Her name appeared again, written in neat block letters. At the bottom was a signature his own. He didn't remember signing it, but the ink was there, binding her as a company medic. She must have kept it all these years. Then he found another envelope taped beneath the lid of the box. It was addressed to him, but never mailed. The letter read, "Nathan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't let them separate my girls. You once told me every building deserves a second foundation. I hope you meant people too. Take care of them as if they were your own. Rachel." Nathan folded the paper slowly. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, rattling them softly. He looked at Evelyn and Lila. "Your mom was brave," he said quietly. "Braver than most men I've ever known." The officer cleared his throat. "We'll need to finalize the property transfer. Child Services has already been notified." Nathan turned sharply. "They don't need another report, they need stability." "Sir, that's not my call." Nathan took a breath, steadying himself. "Then tell whoever's in charge that I'll handle the arrangements personally." After the officer left, the apartment fell silent again. Lila wandered toward a small bookshelf where a jar of coins sat beside a faded birthday card. She opened it and read aloud in a careful whisper, "Love you to the moon and back. Mom." Her lip quivered. Nathan crouched down, resting a hand on her shoulder. She meant every word. As he stood, Evelyn tugged at his sleeve. "Can we take her things with us?" "Of course," he said, "everything that fits in this box." They gathered drawings, the photo frame, and the coin jar. Before locking the door, Evelyn paused at the threshold. "She used to say this place was small, but warm," she said softly. Nathan nodded. "That sounds like your mom." On the drive back, the air felt heavier. Lila fell asleep, her head against Evelyn's arm. Nathan's phone buzzed on the console, a call from Clara Brooks. He answered. "Mr. Whitaker, I've reviewed the file. The girls need to stay in state custody until the court can verify guardianship. You're not listed as a relative. They're not going anywhere tonight," he said. "I understand how you feel," she replied. "But there are procedures. I've seen what happens when systems replace compassion," Nathan said evenly. "You'll have my lawyers contact you. Until then, they're safe here." He hung up before she could argue. By the time they reached the tower, evening light washed the skyline in pale gold. Nathan carried the girls back upstairs. He set the shoebox and Rachel's letter on the table. The fire flickered again, the same soft glow as the night before. Evelyn unpacked the drawings and taped one above the mantel, a stick figure family, 3 people holding hands beneath the sun. "It was supposed to be us and her," she said quietly. Nathan's voice was steady but low. "Maybe it can be us and her memory." She looked up, uncertain, but didn't protest. Later that night, as the city lights flickered below, Nathan sat alone reading through the paperwork from the apartment. He discovered something that made his pulse quicken: a file labeled Employee Compensation Claim Unpaid. Rachel had filed for settlement after the accident but never received a dime. The claim was denied under a clause he hadn't even known existed. The realization hit like a punch. He owed her more than gratitude. He owed her justice. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. For the first time, he saw how blind ambition had buried the humanity behind his success. He could almost hear Rachel's voice again, calm amid chaos. Every building needs a second foundation. In the quiet of the suite, he made a silent vow. The girls wouldn't go back into the system, not if he could stop it. He would find a way to give them not just shelter, but the stability their mother dreamed of. As he checked on them before midnight, Evelyn and Lila were asleep in the guest room, their small hands intertwined. The photo of their mother rested on the nightstand between them. Nathan stood in the doorway for a long time, the city glowing faintly behind him, his reflection half-shadowed in the glass. He whispered to the empty air, "You saved me once, Rachel. This time I'll save them." Outside, the wind swept softly over Lake Michigan, carrying snow across the sleeping city. Inside the tower, for the first time in years, Nathan Whitaker didn't feel like the richest man in Chicago, just the most determined. The courthouse on West Adams Street smelled faintly of rain and paper. Nathan Whitaker had been in hundreds of rooms where deals were signed and lives were changed, but never one that made his pulse throb the way this one did. He sat at the long oak table beside his attorney, Grace Harlow, a sharp, composed woman with the calm of someone who'd spent years fighting uphill battles. Across the aisle sat Clara Brooks from Child Services, sympathetic but bound by procedure, and a man Nathan hadn't met before, a wiry figure with restless eyes and a wrinkled jacket, Gregory Lane, Rachel's brother. He had the kind of nervous energy that made silence uncomfortable. "They're my blood," Gregory said, his voice trembling with rehearsed conviction. "I deserve to raise them. My sister would have wanted that." His lawyer nodded along, sliding a folder across the table, filled with paperwork that looked legitimate at first glance: custody petitions, financial statements, even a letter claiming Rachel had entrusted him with the girl's care. Nathan didn't look at the papers. He looked at the two small figures sitting quietly with their guardian ad litem near the back of the room. Evelyn's hands folded in her lap. Lila leaned against her shoulder, clutching the same faded shoebox they'd carried since the snowstorm. When the judge entered, everyone rose. "Case 21-3472, the clerk announced. Guardianship petition regarding minors, Evelyn and Lila Lane. Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses and scanned the documents before her. "Mr. Whitaker," she began, "you are not a relative by law. On what grounds do you petition for temporary guardianship?" Nathan stood. "Your Honor, Rachel Lane saved my life 10 years ago. She asked in writing that I protect her children if anything happened to her. I have the means to care for them, and the responsibility to honor her request." Gregory laughed under his breath. "Honor? You mean charity. You think money makes you a father." Grace Harlow rose before Nathan could respond. "Your Honor, my client isn't claiming parenthood. He's offering stability and safety, something the children's biological uncle has failed to demonstrate." She slid her own folder forward. "We've obtained financial records, eviction notices, and a criminal file, 3 counts of fraud, and a suspended sentence from 2 years ago." Gregory's lawyer objected, but the judge raised a hand. "I'll allow it." Gregory leaned forward, glaring. "I made mistakes, sure, but I'm clean now. You don't just hand family to strangers." Clara Brooks spoke for the first time, her voice calm. "Mr. Lane, the department has concerns about your living situation and past conduct. The children require continuity and a safe environment. Gregory's composure cracked. Continuity. You mean selling them off to some billionaire for good? PR. Nathan clenched his jaw but stayed silent. He had learned that silence could sometimes speak louder than argument. Grace turned to the judge again. Your Honor, the girls have already been living with Mr. Whitaker for the past week under department supervision. They are enrolled in school receiving counseling and have consistent meals and housing. The court can verify every detail. Judge Morrison looked toward the back of the room. Is that true, Miss Brooks? Clara nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I've conducted 2 home visits. The environment is stable. The children appear emotionally secure, and they have bonded with Mr. Whitaker. The judge scribbled something on her pad, then gestured gently toward Evelyn. Would you like to say anything, sweetheart? The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn stood small but steady, her voice just loud enough to carry. He doesn't yell. He doesn't scare Lila. He makes pancakes and lets us keep Mama's drawings on the wall. It feels like home. She hesitated, glancing at Gregory. Mom said, family's not just who you're born to, it's who stays when you need them. Even the court reporter paused, typing for a second. Gregory's lawyer cleared his throat. That's touching, Your Honor, but we must focus on legality, not sentiment. Sometimes the judge replied softly, sentiment reveals more truth than paperwork. Grace exchanged a brief look with Nathan, signaling to hold steady. Then she played the final card the letter Rachel had written and signed found inside the apartment box. She read it aloud, her voice measured but tender. If they find you, take them home. Nathan could feel every eye in the room turn toward him. Gregory slammed a hand on the table. That letter could have been written by anyone. It wasn't, Grace said. The handwriting matches her employment forms, and we have a notary record from the same week. The judge studied the documents quietly for a long moment. Then she exhaled. This court recognizes the emotional and practical complexities of this case. Until full guardianship can be reviewed, temporary custody will remain with Mr. Whitaker. The department will continue to monitor the arrangement. Mr. Lane, you are ordered to attend a follow-up evaluation in 60 days. The gavel struck once sharp final. Gregory muttered a curse and shoved his chair back, storming out. Lila startled at the sound, and Nathan instinctively reached out, steadying her shoulder. She looked up at him, eyes wide and wet. Are we going home? She whispered. He nodded, his voice low. Yes, sweetheart, we are. As the courtroom emptied, Judge Morrison removed her glasses. Mr. Whitaker, she said quietly, I've seen money used to buy many things, but I've rarely seen it used to keep a promise. Don't make me regret this decision. I won't, he said simply. Outside, the afternoon rain had turned to mist. Evelyn held Lila's hand as they walked down the courthouse steps, both girls in new coats Nathan had bought that morning. They paused by the curb as the driver opened the car door. For the first time since their mother's death, both children smiled, not wide, not carefree, but enough to remind Nathan what hope looked like. As they drove away, Grace glanced over her briefcase. You realize this isn't over, she said. The state will still investigate Gregory, and there could be challenges ahead. Nathan looked out the window at the passing skyline, the glass reflecting the faintest hint of relief in his eyes. I know, he said. But for now, they're safe. And that's a start. The car turned toward Lakeshore Drive. Inside, Evelyn leaned against his arm, Lila asleep on her sister's lap. Nathan rested his hand over theirs. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about stock prices, deadlines, or the tower that bore his name. He was thinking about Pancake's bedtime stories, and the promise he had made to a woman who once pulled him from the wreckage, and now, through her daughters, had given him the chance to pull himself out of another. Spring came late that year, the kind that still carried a chill in the mornings, but promised warmth by noon. On Harbor Street, near the quiet stretch of Lake Michigan, a small house stood with its porch light always on. Nathan Whitaker had bought it months earlier, though bought wasn't quite the right word. He rebuilt it. The foundation was old, cracked, and uneven, but he restored every inch with care, refusing to let anyone else finish it. The irony wasn't lost on him, a man who once built towers of glass, now finding peace in a home barely 2 stories high. Inside, laughter came from the kitchen. Evelyn sat at the table working on a school project about the person who changed my life. Her handwriting was neat, the lines carefully measured. Across from her, Lila, colored with markers, her tongue peeking out in concentration. "You made my hair purple again," Evelyn teased. "Because you said you wanted to be a superhero," Lila replied, not looking up. Nathan leaned in the doorway, watching them, one hand holding a mug of coffee gone cold. There were moments when he still expected to wake up in his penthouse overlooking the city surrounded by silence. But now, morning smelled like toast and crayon wax. The television murmured softly in the background cartoons, not financial news. He had traded conference calls for lunch boxes, and for once in his life it felt like the right deal. After the hearing, it hadn't been easy. Gregory Lane tried to appeal the custody ruling backed by gossip-hungry tabloids hungry for a story about the billionaire with orphans. Nathan ignored them all. Grace Harlow handled the legal noise, and Clara Brooks, once a cautious observer, became an ally helping Nathan navigate what he called the system maze. The girls started therapy, then school. Slowly, the rhythm of their new life took shape. Evelyn adjusted first. She took charge of routines, packing lunches, checking homework, making sure Lila's stuffed rabbit Daisy always made it to bed. Lila took longer. She woke some nights calling for her mother, and Nathan would sit beside her until she fell asleep again, the sound of the lake waves drifting through the window. Over time, she began to call him Mr. Nathan, then Uncle Nate, and one evening in late April, just Dad. The word caught him off guard, warm and heavy all at once. By early summer, the garden behind the house had become their shared project. Nathan had cleared the weeds himself, planting marigolds along the fence, and a single apple tree near the porch. "Your mom used to love these," he told them. Said they made even small yards feel like a promise. The girls helped water the seedlings, laughing when the hose sprayed too far. "If this tree grows apples," Lila said, "we'll make pies every Sunday." Nathan smiled. "Then we'd better plant another one for backup." It wasn't just a house anymore, it was healing made visible. Photos lined the mantel, one of Rachel in uniform, one of the girls at the lake, one of the 3 of them covered in paint from a messy DIY afternoon. Above it hung Evelyn's drawing from the first week they met, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. This time, she'd redrawn it on canvas, bigger and bolder. Nathan didn't retire, but he worked differently. He stepped down as CEO and founded the Rachel Foundation, named not for tragedy, but for the courage that saved lives quietly. The foundation provided scholarships for single parents, housing aid, and emergency medical training, Rachel's legacy rebuilt in service. Clara Brooks joined as social advisor, Grace Harlow became legal counsel, and together they built something stronger than any skyscraper Nathan ever designed. One crisp evening in December, the first holiday in their new home, the 3 of them decorated a small tree by the window. Evelyn climbed a stool to hang a silver star on top, while Lila hummed carols off-key. Nathan set down a framed letter beneath the tree, the same one Rachel had written before she died. He didn't keep it as a reminder of loss anymore, but of the promise fulfilled. When everything was done, they turned off the lights. The glow from the tree reflected on their faces as snow began to fall softly outside. Evelyn leaned against him. "Mom would like it here," she whispered. "She'd like that you fixed the roof and planted flowers." "I think she would," Nathan said quietly. but it's you two who made this house a home." Lila crawled into his lap, sleepy and warm. "Are we staying here forever?" He kissed the top of her head. "As long as you want." They stayed like that for a while, just the soft hum of the heater and the sound of snow brushing the window. Nathan realized that the loneliness that once lived inside him had disappeared, replaced by the steady pulse of belonging. Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, he stepped out to the porch. The air was cold, the lake faintly visible under the moonlight. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. He thought about Rachel, about the morning he'd first seen her daughters in the snow, and how that single encounter had undone and rebuilt his entire life. From inside the house came the faintest sound, a laugh in a dream maybe, or the creak of floorboards settling into warmth. He smiled, closing his coat tighter. The next morning, the girls woke early to find a new sign above the front door, carved simply with 3 words, "Home at last." Evelyn traced the letters with her fingertips, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really meant it, didn't you?" "I always do," Nathan said. And as sunlight poured through the kitchen window, catching the dust motes and the smell of pancakes, it was clear that Rachel's wish had come true. Her girls were home safe, loved, and laughing again, and the man she once saved had finally learned what it meant to build something that lasts. In the end, the story of Nathan Whitaker and the 2 sisters he rescued from the snow was not about wealth, power, or coincidence. It was about the kind of love that doesn't announce itself with grand gestures, but shows up quietly in the cold when no one else does. When Evelyn and Lila first stood outside Whitaker Tower with trembling voices and frostbitten fingers, Nathan could have walked past them like everyone else. Instead, he stopped, and that single act rewrote 3 lives. What began as a moment of compassion turned into something far greater. Nathan didn't just take 2 girls off the street. He gave them back their sense of safety, their right to hope. Through courtrooms, heartbreak, and public scrutiny, he fought for them, not because it made sense on paper, but because it felt right in his soul. And along the way, those children healed something in him that money never could. Rachel Lane, the woman who once saved his life, had trusted him with her daughters. Her faith reached across time and tragedy, reminding him that true promises never expire. In keeping his word, Nathan rediscovered the part of himself that success had buried, the man who once believed that goodness still mattered, that kindness could change everything. The home on Harbor Street became more than a house. It was proof that second chances are real. It was where fear gave way to laughter, where bedtime stories replaced court summons, and where pancakes on Sunday mornings meant more than any stock market gain. Through Evelyn's resilience and Lila's innocence, Nathan learned that family isn't defined by DNA or shared names. It's built through sacrifice, trust, and the quiet courage to stay when others leave. Even after the legal battles ended, the ripples of that winter morning kept spreading. The Rachel Foundation grew, helping single parents, orphans, and survivors find the same strength that had carried Rachel through her hardest days. For Nathan, it wasn't charity, it was repayment. Every life the foundation touched became a living echo of the woman who once whispered, "You're going to be fine." The lesson of their story reaches far beyond Harbor Street. In a world that often feels disconnected, where people walk past pain without seeing it, this tale reminds us that one moment of compassion can become the turning point in someone else's life, and maybe in your own. You don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is stopping long enough to listen, to notice, to care. Because what we build with love, no storm can ever tear down. For those watching and reading this story, remember, the smallest act of empathy might be the spark that changes everything. Nathan's decision to open his car door that day was simple, human, and immediate, but it was also the beginning of a legacy. And the same is possible for anyone willing to act, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Maybe tonight, as you sit at home, someone out there needs your kindness. Maybe they're standing in the cold waiting for a sign that compassion still exists. Be that sign. Be that person who stops, who listens, who cares. You never know, you might not only save a life, but rediscover your own purpose along the way. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love still finds a way even in the hardest winters, then we invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel. Share this story and help us continue bringing to life the kinds of tales that warm the heart and restore faith in humanity. Your support gives us the strength to keep creating stories that remind the world that kindness is never wasted and hope is never lost. Stay with us for more heartfelt journeys like this one, because every story we tell is at its core about the same truth: no one is ever too lost to be found, and no act of love is ever too small to matter.